If you've been thinking about selling your home in South Florida, you've probably heard completely different opinions about the market lately. Some people are saying it's slowing down, others are saying it's still strong. And if you're in the middle of that, it can feel a little confusing because you're trying to figure it out. What's actually true? And the answer is both can be true at the same time. It just depends on what you're comparing it to. Most people, whether they realize it or not, are still comparing today's market to what we saw during the pandemic years. And that market was very unique. Homes were selling extremely fast, sometimes within days, sometimes within hours. Multiple offers, over asking, little negotiation. Every seller I worked with during that time had multiple offers within the first few days. And the conversation wasn't, will it sell? It was, which offer do we actually choose? That kind of environment creates a certain expectation. It sets a reference point in people's minds. So now, when things don't move that fast, it feels like something is wrong. But the reality is, that pace wasn't normal. What we're seeing now is actually much closer to a more balanced market. And that's where a lot of misunderstanding comes from. Because when people say the market's slowing down, what they're often reacting to is the change in speed, not necessarily a loss of demand. So let's break that down a little bit more. One of the biggest changes right now is inventory. There are simply more homes available across South Florida. Across the board, buyers have more options than they did a couple years ago. And when buyers have more options, their behavior changes. They slow down. They take their time. They compare properties more carefully. I was showing homes recently with a buyer who liked one of the properties we saw. It checked most of their boxes. But instead of moving forward, they said, let's keep looking for a few more days and let's see what else comes up on the market. That mindset right there is very different from what we saw before. Before, there was a fear of missing out. Now, there's more of a mindset of, I want to make the right decision. And that shift alone can make the market feel slower, even though homes are still selling. Another thing we're seeing is how long homes are staying on the market. During the peak, homes would move very quickly. Now, they're taking a little bit longer. And I had a seller recently who was concerned about this. They told me, it's been a few weeks. Should I be worried? And the answer is, not necessarily. Because in today's market, a few weeks is not unusual. What matters more is how the home is positioned within that time. Is it getting showings? Is there feedback? Are buyers engaging with it? Because there's a big difference between a home that's sitting with no activity and a home that's active, but buyers are just taking their time. Another important piece of this is buyer demand. And this is where I think a lot of headlines can be misleading. South Florida is still one of the most desirable places to live. We're seeing people relocate here every day and a strong interest from out-of-state buyers. We still have lifestyle-driven demand, so demand hasn't disappeared. It's just become more disciplined. Buyers are still in the market. They're making more calculated decisions. And this is where negotiation starts to come back into play. Over the past few years, sellers had leverage. They didn't offer much. In many cases, buyers were competing heavily just to get in the deal. Now we're seeing a shift. Buyer credits are becoming more common again. Closing cost credits, repair credits, those conversations are happening more often. And I've had sellers react to that by thinking, does this mean the market is weak? But that's not what it means. I had a situation recently where a buyer requested a credit instead of negotiating the price down. At first, the seller was hesitant. It felt like they were giving something up. But when we looked at the full picture, that credit actually helped keep the deal together. And the seller still achieved a strong overall result. So what we're seeing now is not a weak market. It's a more balanced one. And in a balanced market, negotiation becomes part of the process again. So what does this all mean if you're thinking of selling? It means expectations need to adjust slightly. You should expect buyers to take a little bit more time. You should expect more questions during the process, and you should expect some level of negotiation. But at the same time, you should also understand this. Homes that are priced correctly and presented well are still selling. That part hasn't changed. The biggest challenge now is overpricing, because when a home is priced too high, it doesn't just sit, it starts to lose momentum. Buyers begin to wonder why it hasn't sold. They start to assume something might be wrong, even if everything about the home is perfectly fine. And once that perception sets in, it becomes harder to regain attention. I've seen situations where a small price adjustment easily could have made a big difference, But when it's delayed, the property ends up chasing the market instead of leading it. So instead of focusing on the question, is the market slowing down? A better question is, how do I position my home correctly in today's market? Because the opportunity is still there. Buyers are still active. Deals are still happening. But the approach matters more now. If you understand how buyers are thinking and you align your strategy with that, you can still have a very strong outcome. If you're not sure where your home fits in today's market or what strategy makes the most sense, feel free to reach out. And if you want to stay updated on what's actually happening in the South Florida market, make sure you're following along.